After the Nikon FE, there was a 35mm film camera. I was an enthusiast of the Hasselblad 500 cm for something like 20 years, achieving regular publication in books and magazines like this. Now, some photographers would still regard the 500 cm as a real camera. Why? Well, it had no electronics or coupled exposure meter. Instead, it was operated by springs, levers and cranks. That's probably me, by the way. Here, of course, I might be referring to myself, especially today. When shooting direct to colour transparency intended for projection, you had to get the photography right. Post-production was just light years away at this time. So what you see in this program actually happened. I show a selection converted to digital without corrections, assuming, of course, they might have been riddled with flaws in the first place, which of course they weren't. For most of the time, I used Ektachrome 64 using the services of a couple of independent processing houses in central London. Now, except the interior, so for all of the exteriors, I hand-held everything. I learned how to hold my breath and, of course, shoot between heartbeats. Incidentally, inside churches, the font was well placed for that classic view down the nave of the church or the cathedral. Otherwise, image stabilizers were very much on a distant planet. I hardly ever used an exposure meter. I guessed the exposure most of the time. By sticking with the same film, Ektachrome, rating it at 64 ISO, also the same shutter speed, 125th of a second for landscapes and architecture, you don't really want to change it much, particularly by sticking with the standard lens where you've got good depth of field. So to give an example, on a lovely sunny day in June, then the exposure would be, guess what, 125th of a second at f11. Now that same scene in winter, you would have to open up 1.5 stops, so to 125th of a second, between 5.6 and 8. Easy, isn't it? If the sun goes behind a cloud, then you open up a stop again. Maybe be brave and use a 60th of a second. And that is the way I worked most of the time, learning to read the light with my eyes and, of course, that world of mystery in between. I supplied images from my library and to contract. Now, the client wasn't concerned really how the photograph was taken, so long as it what they wanted, what they required, and of high quality. And incidentally, a Hasselblad didn't make me a better photographer. Medium format sold better than 35mm, and the square format had that hidden advantage because it could be cropped either way, provided that the composition itself wasn't as crammed as X. If in the future smartphone photography becomes more acceptable in publishing, I think we might have a similar situation where a digital image taken with a digital camera is more likely to be used with a similar picture from an iPhone or smartphone of any kind. I kept to the UK mainly as I was knowledgeable about the area and I could supply photographs of these places then were just a bit more than a picture. I knew something about what I was photographing. Under contract I was sent to France, Denmark and Norway, but my proudest achievement was very close to home, and that was in the 1980s. I was commissioned to produce this book about London, all of course taken with the Hasselblad, and I feel it shows a technique that, dare I say, I have largely lost today with my digital hat. I have since done a book on my home county of Surrey. In fact, I've got it here. Here it is. It mixes quite successfully film photography with digital. And this book, incidentally, has been reprinted several times. Such has been its success. And I believe, although it came out nearly 20 years ago, you can still buy it today. Have a quick look, I might learn something. But the one image that will remain in my memory forever was taken on the summit of Ben Nevis. I was with a walking party of an HF group, actually, and we had a most wonderful day for our ascent of Ben Nevis. We couldn't have asked for more, but we got it. As soon as the walking party reached the summit of Ben Nevis, guess what? It clouded over. But then, cloud, of course, contains moisture, and that became the magic of what was about to happen next. What are you looking at? You are looking at a Brocken spectre. And what is happening is that the sun, of course, behind me, is trying to penetrate through that light cloud. Now we are looking down a gully, and that, yes, that is me. That shadowy form there is me, surrounded by a glory. How appropriate. Yes, at last I've reached the status of becoming a Saint Derek. And incidentally, if there are several people with you, you only, of course, see yourself. The Brocken spectre, of course, interrupted our picnic lunch, but it lasted a few minutes, and a little while later the cloud melted away, and we had that fantastic view, which of course was the real reason we had come. Olympus started to support my work from 1998, when I was gradually making that transfer to digital, and Olympus and of course OM System still support my work today, and I'm very grateful about that. But I learnt the craft of photography with that Hasselblad 500 cm.